There are things you hear and eventually forget, but there are also things you feel and can never erase from memory. Sometimes what keeps us awake at night isn't ghosts, it's people, when they begin to act like they're no longer themselves. The 3 stories tonight aren't about nightmares. They are real experiences, shared by those who believe they saw something that logic simply can't explain. A child who carries a name that was never his. A mother who appeared at the church door in the middle of the night with hollow eyes, and a hidden mirror behind a wall where 2 sleepwalking children were drawn to as if led by an invisible hand. You can explain it all with science, but when reason is no longer enough, we're forced to look into the dark. Story 1. My friend, Mr. Jim. My son George has always had a strange way of picking friends. Even from a young age, he was drawn to the kids who didn't quite fit in the quiet ones, the odd ones, the ones who stared a little too long without blinking. My husband and I used to laugh about it, chalking it up to George's open heart and curious nature. But there's one friend, one story, that's never left me. We had just moved because of my husband's work. George was starting 4th grade at a brand new school. He adjusted quickly, outgoing, friendly, always the kid with a smile. So when he came home talking about a boy named Sebastian, we were relieved. He finally had a friend. Then I got the phone call. The school wanted me to come in. There had been an incident. My stomach dropped. When I picked up George, he was silent. Unusually so. I tried to ask him what happened, but he just stared out the window. He looked afraid. At the school, the principal explained that George had hit another student, Sebastian, over the head with an eraser. No one saw it happen, but both boys gave the same story. George had just snapped, hit him, and walked away. They weren't pressing charges, just a warning, a check-in. But something didn't sit right. That night, right before bed, George finally opened up. He said Sebastian had tricked him. They'd been playing make-believe, pretending to be characters from a video game. Sebastian told George to KO him with an eraser. George did. And that's when Sebastian fell, screamed, and whispered in his ear, "If you don't act like you really hurt me, I'll hurt you for real." It was a setup, and George was terrified. I was furious. Not at George, but at this strange boy who had manipulated him. I called Sebastian's mom that night. Her name was Maggie. She sounded sweet, polite, even a little embarrassed. She said she already knew the truth and had scolded Sebastian. He's always had a vivid imagination, she told me. Sometimes he pretends to be someone else. Doctors think he'll grow out of it. Then she suggested a sleepover to smooth things over. Let the boys reconnect. I was hesitant, but Maggie sounded sincere. Against my better judgment, I agreed. That weekend, I dropped George off at Sebastian's house. Maggie invited me in, offered me wine, made small talk while the boys played in the basement. She was perfectly normal, warm. I began to feel silly for being so nervous. Later, I asked gently about Sebastian's behavior. Maggie's tone shifted. She admitted he had some issues, but he was getting better, socializing more. Being around George had helped. When it was time to leave, I went down to the basement. The boys were laughing, playing Battleship. Everything seemed fine. The next morning, I came to pick George up. He was waiting at the door, smiling. But the second we pulled away from the curb, he broke down. He told me that sometime during the night he woke up. The room was dark except for a strange flickering light from the bathroom. Not a lamp, not a nightlight. Candlelight. George crept closer, peeked through the slightly open door. and saw Sebastian standing in front of the mirror whispering. But he wasn't calling himself Sebastian. He kept repeating the name Mr. Jim. Mr. Jim. George watched frozen as Sebastian held something in his hand, a candle stub blackened. He was speaking in a deep, guttural voice like someone was speaking through him, like he wasn't alone. Then the candle went out, and the whispering started again. But this time, it was right above George's bed. He didn't understand the words. It didn't even sound like English. Just whispering long and drawn out inches from his face. George didn't move, didn't breathe. Eventually, Sebastian climbed back into bed, like nothing had happened. When George told me this, I felt something in my gut twist. This wasn't just childhood imagination. This was something darker. I called Maggie. She laughed at first, but when I pressed her, her voice faltered. She confessed Sebastian had been diagnosed with something more serious: dissociative identity disorder. He'd been expelled from 2 schools already. I was stunned. Why hadn't she told me? Then she begged me not to tell the school. I said I needed time to think, but I never got the chance. The following Monday, Sebastian attacked another student at recess. Badly enough that the school sent out a notice to all the parents. He was expelled immediately. I tried calling Maggie. Her number was disconnected. Days later, I drove to the house. It was empty. No sign of a move. No goodbye. Just gone. And on the wall of the basement, just behind the spot where George had slept, I saw something etched into the wood, almost invisible. Mr. Jim was here. Story 2. The mother I didn't recognize. I grew up in a Southern Baptist household, the kind where we didn't believe in ghosts, but we absolutely believed in demons. If something strange happened, it wasn't a lost soul. It was something darker, something biblical. My mom, she never cared much for religion. She'd always say God and I have an understanding, like it was some private joke. She wasn't atheist, just distant. She didn't need structure. But I did. Looking back, I think she suffered from something far beyond doubt. Something that lived behind her eyes. Some nights she was the woman who raised me. Other nights, she was someone else entirely. It started with a dream. I was maybe 13 when I had it. In the dream, my mother barged into my room, screaming, her hands gripping my wrists so hard they burned. Her face twisted in fury. Then I woke up, heart-pounding, drenched in sweat. And that's when the door slammed open. She was there. Same scream. Same fury. Same words. It was like the dream had been a warning. She didn't remember it the next morning. Acted like I was being dramatic. "You probably just had a nightmare, sweetie," she said with a hint of annoyance. But I hadn't been dreaming. Not the second time. Then came the backyard. One afternoon, I heard her outside laughing. Not chuckling, laughing. A giddy, manic, almost childlike cackle. I looked out and saw her holding a massive black snake. Barehanded. She'd always been terrified of snakes. Couldn't even watch them on TV. But there she was, barefoot in the grass, holding it like a baby. When I called out, she tilted her head at me and smiled. Not a normal smile. A wide, hollow grin, like she didn't recognize me. Like she wasn't really my mom in that moment. She told me to come closer. I ran inside. Later, she claimed I imagined it. She even laughed about it. Said I must have had another dream. But she wouldn't look me in the eye. Then came the church night. We had a youth lock-in one winter. A full overnight at the chapel. I was so relieved to go. Church was the one place that felt safe. Predictable. At around 4:30 a.m., we were all settling into our sleeping bags when someone started knocking. Loud. Constant. moving. It circled the building slow and deliberate. Not random, not wind. It was knocking, in rhythm, like it was testing the walls. I ran to wake the pastor. When he opened the chapel door, he stumbled back. My mother was standing outside, barefoot, soaked in sweat. Her hair clinging to her face, lips moving like she was speaking, but no sound came out. Her eyes locked on mine, and then she smiled. The pastor whispered, "Stay here," but my legs moved on their own. I walked to her, climbed into the car. She didn't say a word the entire ride home. When we got to the house, she paused at the front door and stared at me, like she was trying to remember who I was. The next morning, she was in the kitchen, humming, making pancakes. She smiled and said I was just about to go pick you up from church. She had no memory of the night before. I never told anyone. No one at the church mentioned it. They just looked away, like they wanted to forget. Years have passed. My mom is gone now, but I still don't know what to make of that night, or the snake, or the dream that came true. Maybe it was mental illness, maybe addiction, or maybe something else lived inside her. Something that borrowed her face. All I know is this: whatever knocked on that chapel door wasn't my mother. Story 3. The mirror behind the wall. When my oldest son was 9, he started sleepwalking. It was subtle at first. I'd find him standing in the hallway at night, eyes open but unfocused, his feet shifting slowly from side to side. He never spoke, just stood there breathing, watching, or maybe not watching at all. Then the tapping started. One night I heard it, a soft, rhythmic knock. Not loud, just enough to wake me. I got up and found him at the hallway wall, forehead gently bumping against it over and over again. He didn't respond when I called his name. I had to touch his shoulder, shake him gently. He blinked, looked around, and walked back to bed without a word. He remembered nothing in the morning. It happened a few more times. Then it stopped. I thought it was just one of those weird phases, until my younger son started doing the same thing. Same age, same hallway, same tapping, same eerie stillness. Only this time, it felt worse, like something had been waiting. Years later, with both boys off at college, my husband and I decided to renovate. Just simple stuff, new paint, updated walls. While peeling old wallpaper in the hallway, we found it. A mirror. Not just any mirror. An antique, old-fashioned one embedded in the wall, hidden completely behind layers of wallpaper. The wood was carved with strange symbols, Latin maybe. I remember one phrase clearly, speculum transitus, the mirror of passage. I didn't want to believe it, but I did the math. That mirror, it was positioned exactly where both my sons had been knocking their heads. They couldn't have known. It had been sealed off for decades. But they found it, in their sleep, like something inside the mirror had been calling them, or trying to get out. The worst part, one night when my youngest was still sleepwalking, I remember him whispering, "It's locked now, I can't get in." I smashed the mirror the same day we found it, but sometimes, when I walk past glass, I swear I see something move that I didn't. A reflection that lingers too long. A version of myself that doesn't blink. You can turn off the lights. You can close the door. You can shut your eyes and tell yourself it's just my imagination. But the people in these stories, they once thought the same thing. What terrified them wasn't the screaming, it was the silence at the wrong time. Not the heavy footsteps, but the whispers brushing against their ears in the middle of the night. Not demons revealed in plain sight, but the people they knew, suddenly no longer acting like themselves. If you've ever felt like someone close to you suddenly wasn't quite right, ask yourself, are you really speaking to them? or to whatever is standing behind those eyes.